Will you vote for reform because Farage is leader? Would you want him as your MPs? Two things going on. Leading the party, standing in Parliament. Yesterday, he gave what he called an emergency election announcement. I was tuned into the radio. I thought, what's going to happen? And so at the press conference, he said, number one, I'm the new leader of Reform UK. And number two, I'm going to stand as an MP in the Essex constituency of Clacton. Only last month, Mr. Farage said he would not stand for the party that he once led. But he said he changed his mind because he didn't want to let people down.
The other thing that really shook me in a way last week were the number of people coming up to me on the street saying, Nigel, why aren't you standing? I can't let down those millions of people. I simply can't do it. It'd be wrong. So I have decided, I've changed my mind. It's allowed, you know. It's not always a sign of weakness. It could potentially be a sign of strength. So I am going to stand in this election.
So the former leader, Richard Tice, who you'll know from this show, has decided he's going to become party chairman instead. In the press conference, Farage laid out his plan for the next 5 years as leader of reform. So he said he will be in place for 5 years, and he says he's going to lead a political revolution.
I'm coming back for the next 5 years. And there is one very simple reason for that. We all know already that the Conservative Party will be in opposition. But it won't be the opposition. They are incapable of it. They've spent most of the last 5 years fighting each other rather than standing up and fighting for the interests of this country. They are split down the middle on policy, and frankly, right now, they don't stand for a damn thing. So our aim in this election is to get many, many millions of votes.
OK, well, let's just have a look at this remarkable moment in the election campaign, the arrival of Farage, the perpetual outsider, right? He's a guy who's never really gone for the Westminster thing. He hasn't been voted in when he stood, but he's always embraced being outside Parliament. What will it be like for him if suddenly he's captured by the institution and he goes in and he finds himself there? Will he be bored sitting there as an MP? We'll have to see. Let's have a look at what he's proposing to do and where he's proposing to stand. Clacton, which is on the coast of Essex there. Right, just there's the map. There's the pin, right? East Coast, down very, very Brexity part of the country. And this guy's important, Douglas Carswell, because he was the MP before. So Carswell was a Conservative MP in Harwich, 2005, and then in Clacton in 2010. And then he said, no, I'm going to be UKIP, at the time Nigel Farage's party. He said, I'm resigning as an MP and I'm going to stand again as UKIP. And here's the thing. The wow moment is that he won that by-election and became UKIP's first elected MP as a result. And it's so interesting. This Carswell moment had all kinds of knock-ons. We'll enjoy some Clacton seaside postcards. Why I tell you it's why it's politically significant. And it's this. Carswell winning in 2014 caused Cameron to get a fit of the willies because he had a general election coming and he was worried about UKIP. So he arguably went into a panic and promised a referendum on Brexit, which then went through. So you can argue that it goes Carswell, Clacton, Cameron, Brexit. So one little thing, the butterfly in the forest, caused Brexit, and it was Douglas Carswell standing in that seat. That's why it's an important seat. Other candidates, we should say, Lib Dem Matthew Bensalem, Greens Natasha Osborne, Jovan Owusu-Nepal for Labour, and Giles Watling, who was the MP, is standing again. Wow. It is one of those moments, isn't it, Jackie? It's the drama of British politics.
Oh, it's a very big moment. And as we discussed, a very big moment for the Tories with potentially a big impact on their poor performance so far. But just to go back to your point about, if Nigel Farage is elected as an MP, let's not forget this was the man that said, when he previously said he wasn't standing, why would I want to spend every Friday in Clacton? Well, one of the things about being an MP, Nigel, is that you have to go to your constituency, you have to have surgeries, you have to sit in Parliament on your own and, attend to debates. He's a big political figure, but he's not a man for the work and the detail.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, our mutual friend Ian Dale was going to stand in Tunbridge Wells, and someone discovered that he once said, I don't like Tunbridge Wells, and he had to pull out.
But he had the sense to pull out.
Well, I didn't.
But he didn't have to. I mean, Ian Dell could have said, well, I don't like Tunbridge Wells at the moment. I think it could be much better, and this is why I'm going to make it
He
a
shouldn't
better
have pulled
place.
out. No, exactly.
He could have done that. I think Nigel Farage is an incredibly charismatic character. I think Jacqui's right. He's a big political figure, big political personality, but I can't imagine him sitting on the detail of a select committee meeting, going into the nitty-gritty of legislation and the amendments and whatnot. So I think that
we want to, but seriously, leaving aside the Clacton issue, don't we want our big political figures in the House of Commons generally? Isn't that a good thing? I mean, he has arguably changed the country without ever setting foot in there. That's quite amazing.
That is true, but I think it's about personality rather than substantial politics. And again, I mean, Douglas Carswell himself was able to win in Clacton because he stood for something, and that was a sort of an open market, freer market. And indeed, after Brexit, this kind of idea that we're going to pull those levers and make the country a better place, we've not seen that happen. After Brexit, we've not seen many of the regulations that the European Union have imposed on us, or indeed many of the quotas and tariffs. I'll give you an example. I'm half Moroccan.
Yeah, Brexit is a failure, you're right, Reem.
Brexit wasn't a failure itself, but
Yeah.
everything that we've done after that has proven to be a failure. The Conservative government was a failure. And I'll give you an example of that. In Morocco, we import tomatoes from Morocco, and we still impose quotas and tariffs on Moroccan tomatoes, making them more expensive for British consumers. That's a leftover from the EU. The EU is a protectionist bloc, and what we've done is we've still imposed those quotas and tariffs, making things more expensive for Britain.
Well, because we want to protect our own tomato
We agree
farmers.
that Brexit is a failure, and this Tory government is a failure in trying to make Brexit work for Britain.
Yes.
Nigel Farage's whole political life has been about Brexit.
Well, he said it's a failure.
So what's his, by the way, the one thing I agree with him about is nothing's working in the country.
Yeah.
We do need change. I'm just not sure Nigel Farage is the change we need.
All right. Is reform going to be boosted by Farage? Peter in Wolverhampton, what do you think?
Well, I live in Wolverhampton West, which is Enoch Powell's old constituency, and even Enoch Powell wasn't as cruel as this reform lot who want to let migrants drown in the Channel.
Well, I don't know that they've said that. They wanted to push them back and so on and ship them back to France. That's true. Maybe that is the same thing. I don't know. Go on, Peter. No? OK, it was a one soundbite. Cool. I like it. Efficient. Gavin in London. Hi, Gavin. Hello. OK. All of our phone lines have exploded. That silence is so frightening.
It's not true that Reform want to drown migrants in the Channel. And I disagree with this, by the way. But what they have suggested is for legal migration to restrict it, to impose a tax on businesses that
Ben Habib said something close to that.
Well, I think the point is that they want to be seen as being very, very hard on immigration, which I think is wrong. But I'm just saying that I don't think they want to kill anyone. I think it's wrong to say that.
Now this is there is an interesting point about whether or not Nigel Farage's entry into the competition makes this an immigration election. Labour have talked pretty tough on immigration. They're talking about expectations on employers to upskill British workers rather than to always depend on those who are coming from abroad. At the weekend, they were talking about reducing levels of net migration. But on the whole, Labour don't want to fight this election on the basis of immigration, whereas it seems likely, at least for a period of time, that with Nigel Farage entering the fray, that's what a lot of the debate and the conversation.
Yeah.
And also
but also
the
the Conservatives had bad news on Rwanda yesterday. They were told that the first flight won't even start till the end of July.
This is actually and this is my theory about why the election was called when it was. Let's also be clear about the fact that if the election was called in November, Nigel would probably be off in the US fighting the election with Trump. So actually the fact that it was called for July, I think has a huge impact on what Nigel Farage's own sort of personal capacity would have looked like. I think the primary reason why Sunak called the election for July is because he felt as though things would only get worse.
Yes.
On Rwanda, again, with regard to the summer months, migrants are more likely to cross the Channel where the weather is a little bit nicer, a little bit easier to cross. Legal migration was only going to rise, and Sunak would have been blamed for it.
We hope we'll get our phone line sorted out. We apologise for that. After the break, we will. But let's talk about Nigel Farage. I gather our phones are working now. Someone's got the spanner out. Hi, Angela in Cardiff.
Good morning.
Inshallah, fantastic. You're there. What would you like to say?
If I say to you that if Farage was the only candidate on a ballot paper, I would go along to the polling station and then destroy my paper I feel that strongly about this man.
Destroy it how? By fire, or what would you? How would you destroy? Let's just get into this fantasy of yours.
Well, I'd invalidate it. I'd invalidate it
okay.
somehow.
So even if even if that meant you were in Clacton, let's say, and you had no MP as a result, you'd rather have no MP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting from that you don't like him very much.
I don't. I mean, he mixes with Trump, which is, it's not a great reference for him. But I just think he's caused such divisiveness in this country with Brexit, and it's just horrific. I turn the sound off when his voice comes on.
Because
I'm so
I was
appalled by
listening.
him.
I ended up listening to it last night. They had it on the radio for about 25 minutes. This speech of his, which was going on and on and on. And I thought, we've in a very odd period where we've had three incredible, all-time great political communicators: Trump, Johnson and Farage, and they've all been on the right. And I don't understand, why haven't we got the equivalent on the left?
Well, because it's easy, if you want to be a populist who sows division, to be rhetorical.
Oh, to be right-wing?
The real challenge for politicians.
I don't think
real
that's true.
challenge for politicians is actually, how are you going to bring people together, not how are you going to sow division.
So right-wing stuff is easier to be populist on.
I disagree. I think it's much easier to be emotional about things like, actually, if you want the government to be doing more, if you want the government to be protecting you, it's much easier to get to, I think the left sort of have a monopoly on compassion. I also don't think it's really fair to say that Nigel Farage is stoking divisions with Brexit. I think that the British people wanted Brexit, and I think that the primary situation that we found ourselves in now is that we've not pulled any of those levers.
All right.
We've not implemented those
as discussed with your Moroccan tomatoes.
Moroccan tomatoes,
I understand. I won't forget them. Angela, thank you. Pete in Sheffield, hi.
Oh, hello.
What do you think? Is Farage going to boost reform?
I think it's going to boost a lot of things. To be quite frank, I think he'll make a lovely politician, and I think he'd make a great Prime Minister as well.
Well, it might happen.
He's down to earth, and he doesn't beat around the bush, telling us lies, talking utter rubbish, and supporting wars. I mean, wars are the worst thing for asylum. Every time we have wars, you get more asylum seekers. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's sick.
You think he'll get in Clacton, his constituency, will he?
I hope he does. I only wish I lived in Clacton.
Right. Were you in a Labour seat then, or a Conservative?
Well, actually, I came from Manchester, but I'm living in Sheffield at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm a United supporter as well, so that's all.
You've got to throw that in. Okay.
That's what's most
I
important.
support a proper football team, not pretenders.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you. Good to have a football shout-out. Is your manager still with you, Pete?
Alex Ferguson, not. It's a shame.
Ten Hag is still there. I think he's quite good. Carla in Gloucestershire, hi.
Yeah, hi, Jeremy. And lovely panel of guests. Hello to you all. Yes, I just want to say, not a chance in a million. And I look forward to this. I'm hoping he will fail miserably and we can actually get back to some normality.
Well, he might. There are two failures that he might suffer. He might fail in Clacton, obviously, but the bigger issue is whether that Reform just don't get many votes. And the way things look at the moment, they might get 10%.
I know. And the worrying thing is I think he probably will be voted in Clacton or wherever he's supposed to be standing. But the thing is about Farage, can you imagine him dealing with all his constituencies' problems and, doing that for 5 years? He could probably stick it for 5 years. But, he's he's basically, I find that he has a pea brain and loves the attention.
Right, a pea brain, as in a small brain. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that. That's an interesting point of view.
Nigel Farage is in the George Galloway school of MPs. He rocks up, he makes a sort of fuss, he gets, not in the case of Nigel, but potentially, gets elected, serves one term, doesn't really focus on the things that he said he was going to focus on to his electorate, and then sort of wanders off somewhere else to...
But you can't deny
he
is popular and people like him. People like what he stands for.
There's a Trump thing going on a bit, is there? With him?
I think from what we're hearing on the phones is he's a very Marmite character.
Yes.
There are some people who clearly want that, and there are lots of other people who very much don't.
Well, the phone so far is blokes are in favour of Farage and women are doubtful, which is I just wasn't expecting. James in Norfolk, are you going to stick with that division? What do you think?
Yes, Jeremy, good morning to you all. The politics today needs a little bit of a grenade thrown into it. We've got Sunak, who couldn't organise boiling an egg. Starmer, who's got nothing at all offer, and listens to his right-hand woman, or was more dictated to by his right-hand woman. We need a little bit of something.
A little bit of a grenade is not a phrase we hear very often, but I mean, you either have a grenade or you don't, so when it goes off, there's usually some damage.
Yeah, well, in this particular case, I think it's going to be to the Conservatives, and I think a lot of people will vote for reform, and a lot of people will vote for Nigel. We just need something. And
Okay.
Let's face it, after all, they're all in it more or less for themselves. They can promise the earth before an election and then totally change something in the next 5 years. So, we need a little bit of humour brought in.
We shall see. It's a lot for Labour to carry, that's for sure, if they do get in. Thank you, James. Kathleen in the West Midlands, hi.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Nigel Farage, I don't trust him. I wouldn't vote for him. But I'm going to tell you, he is a cat among pigeons.
Yes.
He is the cat that's among pigeons. He is causing a lot of unsettlement, and he's a man that he does the talk, but he doesn't do the walk.
Well, I remember he did, after that Carswell by-election, he said, this is me quoting him directly, he said, the fox is now loose in the Westminster henhouse. And I always remember that phrase. I thought, so you've given us a similar version of that.
Yeah.
The cat among pigeons.
He's a cat among pigeons, and he does the talk. He's
But he
wonderful
doesn't
at
walk
doing
the walk.
talk, but he doesn't do the walk.
Thank you, Kathleen. I tell you what, we've got so many calls coming in there because our phones broke earlier. We must talk more. So stay with us and we will have more brilliant calls. And there's so far, all the men have been pro-Farage and all the women have been anti. Is that right? More calls on Nigel Farage. Roy's in Wolverhampton. Hi, Roy.
Hello.
Right. All the men have been pro-Farage and all the women have been doubtful. Which side are you on, Roy?
I'm on Nigel's side. I was going to vote reform anyway, but I think he's thrown a spanner in the works, hasn't he? Because the Tories have been going on. They've had 14 years to put the country in the state we're in. Now they've got some wonderful ideas to sort it out after 14 years. But Nigel's really put the spanner in the works because I think everybody's knocking Trump. And, whatever you feel about him, it might be a good idea to have a foot in their camp, And if Nigel's over there helping out Trump, if Trump does win, we might need a friend.
Well, we will need a friend. You look at the Eurovision Song Contest results, we don't seem to have any friends.
But Nigel won't be over there helping out Trump because apparently he's going to be the leader of reform for 5 years.
Well, yeah, but
let's not forget, he previously said he wasn't going to stand because he thought that what was happening in America was more important than what was happening in the UK.
Well, yeah, but he's got a line into Trump, Roy, hasn't he? That's the thing.
He has, and he's given everybody something else to think about from what the Tories are saying, that they've been saying for 14 years and they've done nothing on to get us into a state. And I think with him, he might not be able to go over and help Trump now, but there's a long time before their election, isn't there?
Yeah, in November, yeah. Well, so you're our second caller from Wolverhampton. Pete was cut off earlier by accident. So what's going on? Is it very politically exciting in Wolverhampton at the moment?
Well, yes, of course it is, now that we've got reform running, and I think, people are saying that they have no experience. Well, look what experience he's done.
I think Roy is absolutely right.
Roy.
I think Roy is absolutely right. I mean, the fact that the Conservative government and the Conservative Party itself has entirely lost its principles, lost its ideological direction. Again, huge amounts of taxes, the highest tax burden since Second World War. We had lower taxes under the Labour governments of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, for goodness sake. And at the same time, restricting housing supply so young people can't afford housing, increasing spending significantly on the very, very wealthiest, and by the very, very wealthiest, I mean pensioners.
You're Conservative, right?
And again, I would call myself a liberal. I would call myself
a
but
small c
liberal.
Conservative.
And the Conservative government, the Conservative Party,
is for Rishi Sunak.
The Conservative Party are not Conservative. They've effectively entirely adopted left-wing ideology and entirely adopted incrementally increasing the government's reach with regard to
you agree with reform, that they're red Conservatives?
I think the point is that the Reform Party have captured many people who again feel disgruntled with the Conservative Party for not being Conservative at all.
Neville's in Gloucestershire. Let's see if they've captured you, Neville. Are you with reform?
Not at all, no, I'm afraid not.
Well, don't be afraid. So why are you resisting Nigel Farage's allure?
Well, the easiest thing in the world, and I can see your commentators on is to criticise. Look around you. They're all criticising the Conservative Party, and look around you. How many old cars older than 10 years do you see driving down the road?
Well, you raise a good point, because I was thinking about this yesterday. Thatcher did 13 years. Blair did just over 10. It may be, but they've had 5 prime ministers, though, Neville. I mean, they're supposed to be refreshing from within, and they seem to be just flagging so much.
Yes. I mean,
go on, Jacqui.
I think Neville is right. It's very easy to divide and it's very easy to criticise. Now, part of an election campaign is to criticise, but it's also actually to put the country at the heart of what you're doing, to think about how you bring the country together, what you will practically need to do and how much hard work is involved. And I don't think Nigel believes in any of those things.
And also not only to criticise the current situation, but also to propose an alternative. And I suspect over the coming weeks we are going to see that. But unfortunately, I will say I haven't heard much from the Labour Party in terms of substantial policy changes or substantial policy initiatives. We also haven't heard it yet from Reform.
Well, what we know is, and it's quite big because Blair did this, they're not going to raise income tax, they're not going to raise VAT, they're not going to raise national insurance. So they'll have the same amount of money as the current government has, and they're just going to spend it differently. And that's it. That's the election.
And to begin with, and then they're going to grow the economy.
Oh, they're going to grow.
That's the only way in which you get the tax revenue to spend. They're going to recruit more teachers. They're going to cut NHS waiting lists. They're going to set up GB Energy so that actually we're not dependent on foreign energy and high
with money
energy
that
costs,
doesn't exist
therefore.
yet.
Well, we saw, and I will say this, the day the election was called, that morning, we obviously saw inflation stats come out from the ONS. We also saw that we currently have the 4th highest public sector borrowing since records began. So effectively, there is no money left. And the question is, where is this money going to come from?
Well, Jacqui said growth, so we'll wait to see. We'll wait and hope.